Hey guys, Johnny Coombs 2000 here, and welcome to my special review of Man of Steel, which just recently came out. In fact, as of right now, which is Friday, it came out just today. I was fortunate enough to where I saw it last night, actually. I went to the midnight premiere with a couple of my friends, and I initially wasn't going to do this. I didn't think I was going to do something like a review of the film at all. I mean, I'm a big fan, but I didn't think I was going to do it. But you know what? I was like, you know what? I've been on a roll with my E3 videos, and, why not? Man of Steel, I thought it was a fantastic movie, so why not give it a my own video, my own views on it, and let's see how you guys think of the movie if you've gone and seen it already. And if you haven't already, maybe my review will convince you otherwise. Now, to start things off, this is going to be as spoiler-free as possible. I'm not going to give it anything away. This is by no means an official review, so that's why this is audio only. It's no video, obviously. I don't have video of it yet. This is completely, very, I don't want to say unprofessional, but like, it's basically just me telling you guys what I thought of the movie from last night. So first impression video, really. And again, it's going to be as spoiler free, so don't worry. I'm not going to give you any big things away. And if I do, I will let you know. Okay, so to start things off, the movie, obviously, Man of Steel, based off of Superman. Obviously, if you didn't know that, then what's wrong with you? It was directed by Zack Snyder, and it had Christopher Nolan as a producer, which was a big positive for me because of how great he did with the Dark Knight films. Everybody was super pumped, and honestly, it was great, as you guys will soon hear from this review. So to start it off, the cast, Henry Cavill played Clark Kent, Amy Adams, Lois Lane, Michael Shannon as General Zod, Kevin Costner and Diane Lane as Jonathan and Martha Kent, respectively, Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White, Russell Crowe as Jor-El, and Ant G. Trow as Faora, and finally Ayelet Zurer, God, I hope I'm pronouncing these names right, as Lara Lorvan. So if you didn't notice, I was completely reading from Wikipedia. So now that we got the cast out of the way, let's get down to the nitty-gritty, right? So first up is plot. As I said before, I will try to make this as spoiler-free as possible, but just to give you guys a general idea of what the plot is about. So essentially, this is an origin story movie. If you've seen any of the previous films before, then just get all of that out of the way. Just forget about all of the Christopher Reeve films and the 2006 Superman Returns film. This film is a reboot. It has nothing to do with those films. So everything that you learned about Superman from before, forget about it. This is a brand new film. So it's a new origin story, and essentially what this movie does is that it tells the story of Kal-El and the destruction of Krypton, and the way that Jor-El, who is played by Russell Crowe, sends his son off to another planet. And essentially the reason why they do it, I don't want to give anything big away, is that essentially he wants his race, the Kryptonians, to live on Earth. Now, unfortunately for Mr. Russell Crowe as Jor-El, there is an evil bad guy named General Zod who thinks that they can rebuild Krypton. Now, the reason why they want to send the young Kal-El away is because Krypton is on the verge of blowing up. Essentially, Jor-El has foreseen this, and the people of Krypton, the government or whatever, has pretty much ignored him, and they're like, "You're crazy. Krypton will live on," or basically, there's nothing we can do now. Krypton is just going to blow up. That's one way of thinking. So essentially, you have three ways of thinking. Jor-El is like, yeah, the planet is going to blow up, but here's something that we can do, which is send my son off to another planet, and they can the people of that planet can learn from our mistakes. The people of Krypton, the government peeps, are like, whatever, we're going to blow up anyway. There's nothing we can do, so why even bother? And then there's another General Zod. It thinks that, yeah, the planet is going to blow up, but we can still rebuild it, or we can still find some way of saving it. So essentially what happens is that throughout this whole thing, They finally send Kal-El off to Earth, which Jor-El finds to be a suitable planet, and to where his son can live and rebuild himself and teach the people of this planet their ways so that they don't make the same mistake. General Zod is locked away in the Phantom Zone along with his peeps, and they're like, all right, you're sent off now. When they do this, they actually send him on a ship that actually goes outside of Krypton. So when Krypton actually does blow up, this special ship that was housing the Phantom Zone, with General Zod and the other guys in his little band of hoodlums, actually escaped the explosion of Krypton. So that's why they are alive, even though their planet blew up. So we cut away, obviously, back to Earth, and that's when we get the rest of the story, which progresses, as you would expect a Superman movie to progress. And you can kind of tell where this movie goes. It's basically Superman, or Kal-El, or Clark Kent, if you want to call him that, basically trying to find his way, his place on Earth with these superpowers that he's just trying to figure out. He's trying to suppress them, basically just trying to live a normal life, and at the same time trying to figure out who he is. And eventually General Zod and his peeps come back, and it's his way of trying to present himself as the Superman to this new planet that's not ready to have a Superman, but at the same time they need to have a Superman because General Zod is there to try to take over the world, essentially. So it's this big balance between who am I, who do I want to be, and who does this planet need me to be. So that's essentially the basic gist of the whole storyline. I won't give anything farther from that. You guys can go check it out. Essentially, the way that it's broken up, I will say this, it's that it's broken up because there is a lot to say, to explain in a Superman origin story. The way that it's broken up, I thought it was pretty clever in that it starts off in a bunch of, besides the beginning of the movie, where it essentially goes from point A, being on Krypton, to point B, being, Kal-El landing on Smallville. Besides that, everything else, it's broken up into flashbacks. So that was, besides the beginning part of the film, it doesn't go as, getting from point A to point B. There's always some cutaway to a flashback showing Clark in his youth, living in Smallville, being endowed, with these powers, having to, somehow live with these powers, being able to control these powers. And throughout the film, you see this, and it's basically showing a way, his struggles of being just normal, being able to fit in, not being able to really. And I thought that was clever. Sometimes it was a little messy, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But essentially, that's what the story is. It's an origin story. It deals with a lot of stuff, but essentially, it's Superman's way of dealing with trying to figure out who he is, where he comes from, trying to figure out where his place is in this new planet, trying to control his powers, and at the same time, towards the end, when General Zod comes to the planet, is trying to figure out how can I present myself to the world, and not seeming like I'm also trying to take over the world, but at the same time getting the humans' trust so that I can help them get rid of Zod. And it also, at some point, it comes to like this thing where Superman is struggling to see whether he can actually kill General Zod because he is a Kryptonian just like him. So it's all very well done. It's all very complex, really. But because of those flashbacks, you get it's a nice mixture of an origin story while not really there's a problem with some films with the origin story where it spends too much time, telling the origin of the character. It spends too much time of the film, time of the film explaining all these little intricacies where it's like, all right, well, this is how Clark Kent learned responsibility. This is how he learned how to control his powers. This is how he learned how to, do this, and that. You could have had an entire film devoted to his time in Smallville alone. But this film didn't do that. It kind of blended the two together and trying to figure out, his time in Smallville, his time trying to figure out who he is, and his time actually being Superman and saving the planet for the first time. So it was very well done, I thought. So that's the plot. Now we're going to go on to the characters. Now obviously you have Kal-El, which is Superman, Lois Lane, Jor-El, and Lara, who are Superman's biological parents. General Zod, who is the villain. Faro, who is one of the girl chicks, his one of General Zod's main, assassins or whatever you want to call them, followers. And then you have Jonathan and Martha Kent, who are Kal-El's Earth parents. And then Perry White, who is an associate of Lois Lane. Obviously, he's from the Daily Planet. Just to start off, Kal-El, my thoughts on each character. I thought that Kal-El, Superman, Henry Cavill's interpretation of the character, I thought he did a really fine job. It was a weird kind of like mixture of having Christopher Reeves. Like every now and then you saw little bits of Christopher Reeves Superman shine in through his interpretation of the character. But at the same time, it was new. And essentially this Superman, because of the story, the way that they told the story, this Superman struggled a lot more with being human. And I thought that was a very good thing, because how can you possibly explain a film with this man who is basically walking God mode? And it's very difficult, but the way that this Superman in this film, the way they portrayed him, I thought did a very good job in trying to give him human qualities. Responsibility, humility, being taught when to use his powers and when not to use his powers, his struggles trying to find out who he is, his struggles trying to find out who he has to be and who he wants to be. And I thought that this Superman definitely did a good job at kind of portraying that, portraying the struggles of somebody who could potentially do whatever he wants, but at the same time he has a responsibility to himself, to his, his parents, his legacy, to do the right thing. And I thought that, this film did a very, very good job at doing that. I was with Superman the entire way. I felt his, as cheesy as this sounds, I felt his pain, I felt his struggles, trying to figure out a balance between all this responsibility, and did a good job. Lois Lane in this film, in my opinion, was okay. I thought that maybe sometimes it would have done a little bit better. This is Amy Adams' Lois Lane. Now, the thing about Lois Lane from the comics and in pretty much any other interpretation of the character is that she is a very, very strong woman. She's a very strong, very strong character. She kind of goes above and beyond. That's sort of like the thing with her character, is that she's a very strong female character that does whatever she wants. And oftentimes, if you guys remember the animated Superman movie, she often like sticks up to herself against Superman. She kind of like bosses him around, which is a lot, a lot to be said for that. And this character, while she was adventurous and she did do what's right, and you did see a little bit of that, I felt that it could have been a little bit more. I wanted to see her be a bit more adventurous, a bit more risk-taking. But what we got was fair, I thought. It got the character done right. You could see that she, she's a very strong individual and she does whatever she thinks is right. But again, I thought it could have been a little bit more. So yeah, that was Amy Adams' Lois Lane. Next up is Jor-El and Lara, who are Superman's biological parents. Now, first off, I thought, Lara, first of all, her Superman's biological mother, I thought she did a very good job, because she only shows up at the beginning, but at the same time, she was a very strong person herself. I thought that this was sort of like more akin to like the Lois Lane, because she did whatever was right. She was noble. She was very kind. You could tell that when she sent Kal-El off to the planet Earth, she was very heartbroken and stuff like that. And you could see it in her acting, and it was very well done. I really liked this character. I wish we could have seen a little bit more of it. Maybe even seen, not giving anything away, but maybe seen something along the lines with how she would have interacted with Superman once he was grown up, once he had become Superman, essentially. But we didn't get to see that, but I mean, from a story standpoint, it probably wouldn't have made sense. Jor-El, played by Russell Crowe, was definitely an awesome Jor-El. I would say this guy was a badass. And he did an absolutely awesome job being the character. I felt, whenever he was on screen, I felt, this sounds weird, but safe and hopeful, because essentially he was the one that was telling Superman, or Kal-El, what it meant to be Superman, if that makes sense. Like what it's like, or what his mission was, why he got sent to Earth in the first place. And he did an amazing job. I liked his character. I think honestly, I'll be the first to say he did better than the 70s version by Marlon Brando. Yeah, I said it. I like this version of Jor-El better. That's how good he was. General Zod, I thought, was an awesome character. Admittedly, General Zod has never been my favorite Superman villain. I can see why you need him, because he is a good villain to introduce first, especially with his connection to Krypton, with the Superman's origins and stuff like that. But before watching this film, I was not very excited. It's like General Zod again. We've seen him enough in the first movies. Why do we need to see him again? Why couldn't it have been Brainiac or something like that we have never seen? But General Zod actually, General Zod and Aura, I will say, both of them did an amazing job. General Zod, especially towards the end, was a very, very convincing villain. And the cool thing, the good qualities of a good villain is that you see why he is doing the things that he does. That's a great quality to have in a villain, because essentially psychologically you can't admit that you're a bad guy. And with General Zod, he had this belief that he believed in, these views that he believed in. And when he spoke about him, you believed him. You kind of sounds like, well, I see his point. It still doesn't make it right, but I know why he's doing what he's doing. And that's a sign of a good actor. That's a sign of a good character, essentially a good villain, because you can see why he's doing the things that he's doing. For Aura, who is the female who is helping Zod out, I thought she was a badass, because she actually had a lot of screen time before General Zod did towards the end of the film, and you saw her fighting Superman first. And my God, the fight scenes were awesome. She was a very, very convincingly evil woman, very cold, very she was stalking the soldiers at one point, and you were just like, oh man, stuff's about to go down. So for Aura, played a great villainess. Very, very well done character in my opinion. Very awesome fight scenes. So I'm good with Aura. Jonathan and Martha Kent, definitely a big highlight in my opinion, because these are the Clark Kent's human parents. Martha Kent definitely keeps. I'm not gonna give anything away, but like Martha Kent definitely keeps Superman grounded in my opinion. She's the one that constantly reminds him of what it is that he should do, because she knows of his powers and stuff like that, and she knows what he's capable of doing, and she keeps him grounded. And I think that that's a good thing to have in a support character like Martha Kent. Jonathan Kent, who is his dad, if you guys seen the trailers and stuff like that, you definitely see the connection that Jonathan Kent has with Kal-El, Clark Kent. It's a very loving relationship. You can definitely see that in the movie. And a character like Superman, the same way that Spider-Man needed, Uncle Ben, this was very similar. The relationship is very similar, and in fact, I saw many similarities between Clark Kent, Kal-El, and his relationship to Jonathan Kent, and the same. It was almost like the same relationship that Spider-Man Peter Parker has with his Uncle Ben. Jonathan Kent is the one who instilled all these morals and stuff into Kal-El, Superman's mind, and basically he's the one that molded Kal-El into the hero that we saw. And it was a very, very well done performance. I thought I really, really felt every time that the two were sharing a scene together. I really, really felt the connection between the two, and I thought it was very well done. It was very important for the film to have this, for you to have that connection with Superman, because a lot of the reason why he had that human factor was because of his relationship with Jonathan Kent. So big ups. I love the character. So finally, last but not least, this was more or less a minor character in this film, but the last character was Perry White. Perry White is I'm probably getting it wrong, the editor-in-chief. Essentially, J. Jonah Jameson of the Daily, what Perry White is what J. Jonah Jameson is to Daily Bugle. Except this is the Daily Planet in Perry White. And essentially he is Lois Lane's boss, and he himself is a very strong character. He keeps Lois, he kept Lois Lane in check, but at the same time, especially towards the middle and end of the movie, you definitely saw him become his own kind of like very strong character, very leadership type character. And I'm not going to give anything away, obviously, but I liked his portrayal. I don't think we got to see enough of it, but he was the stuff that he did do. I thought was done very well. But because he is a minor character, I don't have anything else to say besides that. Alright, so those were the characters. Now we go on to the production value. I'll start with the acting itself. I thought that the acting in this film was done very well. There was only a few instances where I could say it kind of bugged me a little bit. I mean, very, 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 very few. Some of the extras were a little bit like meh. There was this one point where one of the soldiers was essentially, he was talking with his general or his superior, whatever he was, and he was telling his superiors, like, we got a confirmation on the Superman or something like that. And you could tell, the general was like, the who? And he was like, the Superman, that's what people are calling him. And I don't know why, but that line really bothered me. I have no idea why. But, I mean, that's a very, very small gripe. The acting in this movie was, superb, in my opinion. It got the job done. I think that you would have to have, very, very good acting to kind of pull off some of these, to pull off a Superman movie, which could have, came off as disastrous and corny, kind of like how Green Lantern, unfortunately, came out in his film. But the acting, it was a serious portrayal of Superman, and the acting definitely helped out, give that, again, I keep going back to this human factor. It really gave this film, this character, the mythos of Superman, a human factor that I don't think we had seen before, or that much of. So a lot of it has to do with the portrayal of characters, Superman's portrayal, his feelings that you saw from Kal-El and Clark Kent, the responsibility that he had once he was Superman. Lois Lane's pretty much her connection between Kal-El and, as Superman and pretty much the rest of the world, that she was the link between the two. And she did her role very well. I mean, everything else I've already said with the individual characters, but I thought that the acting was very well done, and I give them props for being able to pull off doing a character like Superman without coming off as too cheesy. Because of that was one of the things that I worried about personally. Next up is the musical score, and holy crap, the musical score in this movie was amazing. Now, the musical score was done by Hans Zimmer, who you'll know as he did the soundtrack for Lion King, which one of my favorite movies. I'm a Disney fan. Yeah, go figure. And he also, more recent stuff, he was responsible for the soundtrack for Inception and The Dark Knight, which that should tell you something. If you like any of the soundtracks from The Dark Knight going into this, then most likely you'll think that this soundtrack is amazing. And in fact, the main theme of Superman is probably one of my favorite superhero movie themes of all time. It's so subtle, it's heroic, but at the same time, again, I keep going back to that, it has a human factor, like responsibility. And the last time I had a feeling like that was the original Spider-Man trilogy soundtrack. So the soundtrack is amazing, and in fact, I'm in the process of learning the Superman, or the Man of Steel main theme by Hans Zimmer on my piano. That's how good this thing is. And I kept humming the theme song on the way home, so that should tell you something. It's great when it has to be. It's subtle when it has to be. It's heroic when it has to be. It's frightening when it has to be. It's very well done. The musical score was amazing in my opinion. The special effects are also one of the things that was very, very well done. Besides a few exceptions, they did everything very, very well. If you've seen just the trailers, just imagine that, you saw how the destruction of Krypton, or the land of Krypton looked, which was very imaginative and a very good representation of it. I don't think we had ever seen Krypton look like that before. Before, it was just kind of like more closer to Earth more than anything. But the interpretation of that was very well done. The special effects for Superman, my favorite special effect for Superman, and this is like a small thing, but it's a huge thing because I thought it was very well done, because I don't think anybody before, any film adaptation has really done it right, or live action rather, was his laser beams. Now his laser beams could look kind of comical if done wrong, but in this one, I don't know, like it was a very subtle thing where like whenever he used his laser beam, you could see like part of his veins on his face. I know it's kind of weird to explain, but just little things like that made it much more cool, and he just reminded me of Cyclops, but without his visor. I am a Marvel fan, but I can say that. But yeah, the special effects were amazing. Now the one little gripe that I have is his flying. Now, I know that you can't really do like a flying, character like Superman without coming off as a little bit cheesy. And this one, they had a couple instances where it looked a little bit cheesy. You could tell that Superman was on a wire, which kind of bothered me. I mean, really, that's the only gripe that I have with the special effects. I think they could have done a little bit better with that, but everything else was just amazing. Like, it's very grandiose. The scale of some of the stuff, some of the scenes was just out of this world, no pun intended. So the production value overall was very, very high. So just to wrap things up with this whole thing, I'll just go over the positives, the negatives, and then my overall score of this whole thing. Not really a score, just my overall thoughts. Starting off with the positives. Now, the positives, obviously, I just mentioned it. The scale of this entire movie was just amazing. I went to go see this, standard 2D, whatever. I may go and watch it in IMAX, in an IMAX theater, just to see how awesome this thing is. But the scale of this movie was, off the charts. The Krypton, the spaceships from General Zod, the destruction towards the end of the movie, I don't know, like everything was just over the top, and it has to be with something like Superman, and it was amazing. It's an amazing movie to look at. The music, as I mentioned, is another big positive. I think that the soundtrack can do a lot for a movie, especially in moments where you don't have any of the actors speaking. Just by standing there, the way that they stand, and the music that's playing can be more effective than any lines that are spoken. So music, again, big positive. The human factor that I keep bringing up is the emotion of some of these scenes, especially the emotions with some of the scenes from Smallville as Clark Kent is growing up, trying to find his place in the world, a small child with all these powers that he's trying to control and stuff like that. Honestly, there were a couple times where I almost teared up. I'm not even gonna lie, like I am mad enough to admit that. And if something like that does it for me, it's like it has to be good. The fact that you can see this, godlike being and have sympathy for him, and just be like, it's gonna be okay, Clark. It says a lot. So that's a huge positive in my opinion, especially in a superhero movie, because you have to have something like that. You can't just look at somebody and be like, oh, it's Superman. He's always going to do something right. He'll never do anything wrong. And in this movie, it didn't do that. It was like you saw his struggles, and I thought that was an amazing thing to do. They did a good job with that. And overall, the last thing was that it was a good Superman movie. I think there was like a lot of worry, especially after Superman Returns, where there was worries that it might not be a great Superman movie, especially if it was going to be rebooted and stuff like that. But I'll be the first to say this was an amazing Superman movie, whether or not you have seen the previous ones. And actually, one more positive: the fight scenes in this movie, holy crap, they're amazing. At some points, I thought I was watching a Dragon Ball Z movie. Not even joking. Some of these fight scenes, especially the ending one, was absolutely amazing. If you don't want to watch it for anything other than, if you don't even want to watch this movie, then just watch it for this. Wait a couple months after the release of the DVD or whatever and look up some of these fight scenes, because they're freaking amazing. And that's another big positive. The action scenes are absolutely out of this world. And to finish off, the negatives. I thought that some of the negatives were, one of the things was explaining Superman's powers. Now, you have to do, with any film dealing with Superman, especially a Superman origin movie, has a big struggle or a big boots to fill as far as trying to explain this man's powers, because they are in a sense, almost limitless. He can pretty much do almost whatever he wants. And in this movie, they did a good job at explaining his powers, explaining how he, because of his Kryptonian physiology, biology, he is able to do these things. But in some points, in some respects, like his ability to fly, I thought that they could have explained it a little bit better. In fact, I was speaking with one of my friends, and she had a hard time explaining it. I asked her, well, at what point did they explain how he's able to fly? And she wasn't able to tell me. And I thought that was a big problem because she's not a Superman fan. As, maybe other fans are able to tell you, it's like, oh, well, this is how Superman flies. But as somebody who is not going to be that much into the comics, is that much into the source material, may have a harder time explaining that. So, explaining Superman's powers, I thought was a little lacking in some respects. There were a few instances where there was also too many flashbacks for its own good. I mentioned before in the story summary where it did a lot. This movie did a lot with flashbacks, and in some respects, they were necessary. It was a good. It was a good progression of telling the story in a different way, but sometimes it had just a little bit too much. I think it cut away just a little bit too many times. I thought that it cut, it cut one scene too abruptly going into a flashback and then brought it back to the current scene. So sometimes I was a little confused. At times, I mean, that's not to say that it messed up the story in any way, but I thought it could have done with just maybe a few less flashbacks. Sometimes Superman seemed a little bit too weak, in my opinion, which is another negative. But I mean, I could completely forgive him because this was the first, this was the first movie, the first film in this series, and you can kind of tell he's still getting used to his powers and stuff like that. But my only gripe was that at one point, while he's still Clark Kent, he hadn't gotten his costume yet. He got hurt by this machine, and he actually started bleeding. And in my opinion, I looked at that and was like, wait, this is Superman. He's not supposed to do that. So hopefully they'll, explain where in the next films or something that he is still regaining all his powers. He's still getting stronger, every day or whatever. But sometimes he seemed a little bit too weak, for my opinion. And finally, Clark Kent. Now, I'm not going to give anything away, but I thought that the handling of his persona as Clark Kent was not explained very well. Now, one of the biggest negatives of Superman is that his alter ego Clark Kent doesn't make sense. Essentially, he just changes his hair and puts on glasses, and all of a sudden nobody knows who he is. And I thought that they were gonna. Now, in some of the comic books, it's explained that the reason why he can get away with this is because he changes his voice, because he's able to change his vocal cords or whatever. He changes his voice. His mannerisms change, he changes his hair, and then he puts the glasses on. And in some other respects, they go above and beyond and say that he's able to manipulate his look somehow. I think this was during the Silver Age where, you can actually get away with something stupid like that. But I thought that this film was going to do a better job explaining that, and it didn't. So, this kind of came off as something just a little bit comical in a way, no pun intended. But the handling of the Clark Kent persona, I thought could have been handled just a little bit better. But essentially, here we go, the end of my review. I hope you guys liked it overall. I'm not going to give this film a grade because, as I said before, this is not an official review by me. I'm not going to give it a grade. Obviously, I would need to watch it more times. Because I just watched it just to have fun. And I did have fun, and that's my overall opinion of this film. If you are if you're a fan of Superman, go watch it, you'll love it. If you're a fan of superhero movies, go watch it, you'll love it. Even if you're not a fan at all. As I said before, the story and the action scenes will be enough to grab you and keep hold of you throughout the entire thing. And it's an overall great film. Go watch it. It's out now. And tell me what you guys think of it. What do you guys think of it? Do you agree with me? Do you agree with my positives? Do you agree with my negatives? Do you like some of the characters that I maybe didn't like or that I did like? What do you think that the portrayal of Superman was? Do you like the new guy? Do you like the new Superman? Do you not like this new Superman? What are your thoughts? let me know in the comment section below. And obviously, if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to me, and yeah, let me know what your thoughts of Man of Steel were. Are you looking forward to the next film? What do you think should change? Let me know. This has been Johnny Crims 2000, and I will see you guys in my next video. See ya. As always, if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you want to get more stuff from me. In the meantime, if you like my videos, be sure to find me on Twitter, Tumblr, Raptr, and Screwattack.com to see the other gaming-related content that I upload. Info is in the description. Who knows? Maybe you'll like my stuff. Maybe. Maybe.